Good afternoon. Welcome. My name is Benjamin Gadan, Director of the Latin America Program at the Wilson Center. I want to thank you for joining us for today's special dialogue. Bienvenidos y gracias por su participación en la conversación de hoy. I'm thrilled to be launching the latest initiative from our Argentina project. It's called Argentina Elige, a series of high-level conversations about the policy ideas of the top candidates in Argentina's high-stakes presidential election, which will take place this October. In less than 20 days, on Sunday, August 13th, Argentina holds its national presidential primaries, known as the PASO, to choose candidates for the general election. The voting will take place amid a formidable set of challenges. Argentina is suffering from triple-digit inflation, a sluggish economy, crushing debt, and a dramatic scarcity of hard currency made worse by historic drought. Polls reveal deep pessimism. Views about the state of the country have not been this negative since the 2001-2002 economic collapse. Not surprisingly, neither the president, Alberto Fernandez, nor his vice president, Cristina Kirchner, are competing in this election. Instead, the ruling Peronist coalition is represented by the country's powerful economy minister, Sergio Massa. Depending on the outcome of the primary, Massa's main rival from the center-right opposition will be either Patricia Bullrich, the security minister during the administration of former President Mauricio Macri, or Horacio Rodriguez Larreta, the mayor of the city of Buenos Aires. Over the years, the Wilson Center and its Latin America program have hosted all three of these candidates, all well-known figures in Argentina and in Washington. However, there is another major player in this election, and he is not a member of either mainstream political coalition. He is Javier Milei, a libertarian lawmaker who has amassed a sizable following by bitterly criticizing Argentina's traditional political parties, describing their leaders as indistinguishable members of the country's political caste. As president, he says he would address Argentina's recurrent economic struggles and crises through radical reforms, including dollarization, sharp cuts to public spending, and privatizations. Though Milei's popularity has appeared to hit a ceiling somewhere around 20%, and his candidates in provincial elections have underperformed, his unexpectedly competitive campaign has already influenced his opponents. Even if he does not make the election's likely second round, he would play a role as kingmaker in the ballotage. To learn more about Milei's platform and his appeal to a diverse group of Argentine voters, we have invited today's special guest, Diana Mondino. Mondino is a congressional candidate for Milei's La Libertad Avanza coalition, a senior economic advisor to Milei, and the director of institutional relations at the Universidad del SEMA in Buenos Aires. I'm very grateful to our partners at McClarty Associates and the regional director there, Kezia McKegg, for their partnership in organizing today's discussion and other Argentina Elige events, and to my colleagues at the Wilson Center, Beatriz Garcia Nais and Facundo Robles. I'll now turn this event over to Alejo Chezerwanco, Chief Investment Officer for Emerging Markets Americas at UBS and a member of our Latin America Program Advisory Board. Alejo will moderate today's conversation. But first, one quick programming note. We've already scheduled our next dialogue in this Argentina Elige series. It will take place on Tuesday, August 1st, and feature Luciano Laspina, Senior Economic Advisor to Patricia Bullrich. Thank you again for joining us today. Thank you, Diana, for your participation. Alejo, over to you.
Benjamin, thank you so much for the introduction. Welcome, everyone. I must admit this conversation has a special meaning for me since my alma mater is the Universidad del SEMA in Buenos Aires, and Diana Mondino herself was my professor a few years back. So, Diana, what a pleasure to have you with us. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Alejo, and I'm grateful you didn't mention my age. You should have said I was a colleague of yours.
Terrific. I know this presidential election is eliciting a lot of feelings, great emotions, but I do want to keep, Diana, our conversation fairly factual and grounded on a document that Javier Milei and the party made available. It is the economic plan under the electoral platform document that is publicly available, and I do want to focus squarely on the economic proposals, right? There are many, they're bold, They're innovative in many ways. I want to start with the elephant in the room, if you agree, Diana, which is the proposal by the party to, at some point, eliminate the central bank of Argentina. What does this mean? If there's no central bank, what is the alternative and how fast?
I wouldn't call it the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is public expenditure, which keeps on growing, and nobody's addressing that issue. At best, other candidates are talking about fiscal deficit and not the size and scope of government expenditure, which is crippling the Argentine economy through regulations, through the tax burden, through the lack of innovation. We don't even have a patent law. There's a lot of things that does not allow the Argentine economy to grow. Having said that, the size of the expenditure comes together with or creates a huge fiscal deficit. Because we have that fiscal deficit, Argentina has taken quite a liking to issuing and printing new money. That has been the case for well over 7 decades. That's why we have such a high inflation. And you mentioned it was on the triple digits. It's probably going to be 150% per annum. We have between 6 and 8 or 9% per month inflation. And that's obviously the result of such an incredible speed at the size of money printing that we have. And because we believe that Argentina should not have such a huge expenditure, should not have a fiscal deficit, because at the same time, something else that we're proposing is quite a change in the fiscal structure. Maybe not having a lower revenue, but having a different revenue from different sources. Then we would not have a deficit, which would not have to be printed away. Therefore, you would not need a central bank, or at least not a central bank with the kind of policies we have right now. Of course, financial bank supervision would still be there. Of course, some sort of, I don't know, monetary research would still be there, but definitely not the kind of monetary policy we have right now. Let me add something else. It's very unusual to have the kind of behavior we have in the central bank today, because people tend to believe that, well, the central bank prints a little bit more money, they raise or lower rates, and that's it. That's not the case in Argentina. And we are experiencing for the third time a kind of policy that the government sterilizes all that money through very inconvenient means. I can expand on that, but that's the reason why we're talking we should eliminate not the building, not the employees. We're not going to go around killing people. We're just saying the central bank cannot have liabilities that are accruing interest. I mean, if you read Sargent 3 decades ago, you know that money that pays interest is inflationary.
Very good. Why don't we go back then to the proposals around fiscal consolidation? You mentioned not necessarily crushing government revenues, but changing the composition of government revenues. Walk us through the main pillars of that reform.
Well, the fiscal reform, of course, it should be the linchpin of what we're doing. Initially, it will not be, because first we need to adjust a lot of relative prices that we have disarray in Argentina for public utilities, and we have deficit in the private companies, etc. What we're considering for the fiscal regime would be a change, would not be done probably day one, would be something down the road, and it would be changing the fiscal, the kind of tax structure where we have most of our taxes are based on labor. 50% of tax revenues are taxes on labor. Let that sink in. So even though we have significant tax rates, and our marginal tax rate on corporates is 35% plus 7% on any dividends, that means around 42%. Then we have something that's, we have about 10% of total federal level income, but about 6.5% of federal income coming from taxes on exports. We believe that should be eliminated. not decrease, not change, not modify, not taken into account for another system. That has to be done. Again, not the one. If you have a fiscal deficit, you take away 10% of your revenues, you are in some problem, but we should take it away in a different way. We would be taking it in consideration so that the taxpayers of that particular tax on exports should be the ones that decide its use, and only for public works. Right now, Argentina budget for public work is under 1%, significantly below 1%. This would increase public work possibility for 6% of total GDP. So that's a major change. And some people object because they say, well, people in the countryside will make a lot of money. Well, they will keep on making the same amount of money they were making before. The only difference is that money would go into the things that matter to them: roads, irrigation system, flood control, something like that, which is extremely important for productivity. Right now, that amount of money goes into current account, namely salaries, or some sort of subsidies for unemployment. And you could create a lot of employment through that means. So that is changing the way. It's not bringing down total collection, but changing how it's allocated.
Excellent, Diana. You referred to relative price distortions. Argentina today suffers from countless and very severe relative price distortions, but I think probably the most confusing one of them all is the dozen exchange rates that people need to grapple with. What is the approach that the team would take vis-a-vis multiple exchange rates, single exchange rate, and what is the transition period from point A to B?
Okay, you're being generous, and it's only a dozen different exchange rates. We have, well, for the people listening to us, depending on how you count them, because you have a different exchange rate. If you consider the different taxes on exports, we have over, 40 different tax rates. Okay, just to give you an idea, the number of different tax rates or different, we call them positions. I don't know what the word in English would be, but the products that are having some sort of tax levied on the export side, it's slightly over 10,000. So technically, you have over 10,000 different dollar prices. It's unbelievable. Okay, or you might say, well, we have just $1 price, but a different level. What we are going through, it will certainly depend on what inflation rate we are facing, and the exchange rate should be 1 and should be free, should not be controlled by the central bank. Argentina right now has 3 different problems with the exchange rate. Number one, the central bank decides what the price is, but it's not a fixed exchange regime as you have in many other countries, because at that price, it is not true that the central bank is willing to buy or sell. At that price, the bank is not willing, but mandates that exporters have to tend in their money, and central bank chooses who might get the benefit of getting that price for the dollar. Otherwise, you have to go into the many other different kind of dollars, and they're always higher. So that is a major problem. Second is that the dollar has a mandatory time to send it to the government. It's a very short window opportunity. For certain cases, it's only 15 days, which brings about a lot of concentration for foreign trade, because producers have to tend in their money or their product to a few traders who have the financial capacity to pay back the government while their clients pay them back within maybe 6 months. I work at least with 2 Argentine exporters. We have to send in the money within 15 days, and our clients will pay 6 months after they get their produce. And if you know an Argentine port, you know it will not get into Europe within 15 days. So you need to have a lot of financial clout to be able to go with that, or ask for a particular loan, which is very, very expensive. And well, there are many, many restrictions. So that should be all eliminated, and the exchange rate should be one. Most people will also add what we call cepo, which are a kind of number of restrictions of who can buy, who can get their dollars, which way you can get them. So technically, I can buy with my pesos $1, but then if I just bought a dollar bill with my pesos and I did not go through the financial system, if I got it from my neighbor, technically that's illegal. And I say, well, it's $1 and it's a pesos. I made my salary through hard work and I paid my taxes and whatever is my savings that are left. If I go and buy $1, I'm in trouble. I can use it to buy a home. So all those restrictions should be eliminated. Can they be eliminated in an orderly fashion? Most other people you talk to will say that they will be able to do this, take them away in an orderly fashion. I find it difficult to figure out how to do it, who goes first, why. So I think it should be taken almost immediately, and it will create a lot of problems. But doing it slowly will create probably even more problems. So there's no single answer to any Argentinian issue, economic issue that can be done and say, okay, I'm really sure it's going to work. But if you don't do it, you're going to be worse.
Understood. Thank you. Let me ask you about a couple of key sectors of the economy where, of course, the government has an outsized role today, and I believe you're proposing a significant change in how things may work in the future. Number one, healthcare reform. Where are we, and what is the proposed adjustment?
Well, again, it's a complex issue. As you know, Argentina has a three-pronged approach to health services. Now you have services that are entirely free. I mean, from the patient not having to pay anything. That's almost collapsing right now. There's no medicines, there's no even cotton for minor injury. Doctors and nurses are paid a pittance. It's almost an insult. The quality, just the quality of the environment is, I mean, some hospitals are really derelict. Then you have what we call the obras sociales, which is the mandatory payments through the union. And the unions are the ones that have even their own hospitals or clinics, or they can participate in through other things. That, even though there's quite a significant, there's a lot of money going into that that system. It is not working very well, has a lot of restrictions. One of the main restrictions, if you switch your job from one sector to another, you might lose everything that you have. You lose your doctor, you lose your clinical information, everything, because it stays where it was. It does not follow you. And there's a third system, that's a private system entirely funded by private individuals that will pay for their insurance. Now, that system is also having some trouble lately because the government has kept their capacity to increase their fees. It's almost frozen. So it's very hard for them to increase price. And even if they wanted to, since people's salaries are not going up, well, how much more can they ask? So doctors at the third level are usually much better. The real estate for doctors is much better. Now, what we're considering is a complete change into that, giving people the option to join whatever they want. Having people at the public system work also have some sort of, at least as an input, as an accounting thing, figure out what the cost of their medicine was, and not the medicine, their treatment was, and rechanging that. Now, for example, if you take into account what we could do with, how do you say, historia clínica?
Clinical records.
Yeah, with your clinical records, if you can, there's a lot of things that can be done through that. We have right now a very bad law, but we could significantly improve on that law, and it would alleviate a lot of resources, and you would get some sort of matching on what is done. But giving people freedom to move among different sectors is vital. That should be done day one. We did not have a very flexible system, but it was one of the things that this government changed, where you cannot move from whatever system you're stuck in. We would give them that freedom. Competition should be working. There's over 900 obras sociales in Argentina. A few of them are quite good. And if they have the incentive to improve, because otherwise they would be losing their potential patients, it might work. There's also a lot of things that need to get done, as whether you have had complexity, hospitals everywhere, all these certain things, whether people should or should not pay a little bit for certain transactions. There's a lot of discussion whether it should or should not be free for foreigners, what kind of things you do for free for foreigners. It takes a lot of political clout, but from the economic sense, there's no question that you cannot have for free for people who are not even Argentine residents.
Absolutely. Thank you, Diana. A reminder to our listeners that there is a questions option on the site. If you're interested in sending questions our way, please don't hesitate. Start typing them in. As we move on, Diana, to the next economic area that I think, again, very large participation of the state, very bold changes proposed, the pension system. What do you have in mind to change the structure of this segment?
Well, the retirement system is something, we have a 3 stages approach. It would come in the 3rd stage and not necessarily in the first one, because you already have a lot of people who are already retired and they get such a little payment back for whatever they did. There's multiple things that need to be fixed one day, not day one, but one day, is that the people who contributed more to the system should be getting a higher payment. You can make voluntary payments if you want to, and those voluntary payments should accrue to your account. Those 2 things seem very far away in the future. What we have right now is a system that makes people, whether they have or have not contributed to the system, a lot or very little or even never, they will have almost the same system. We will curtail that. Right now you have the opportunity of having more than 2 or even 2 or 3 payments from the government. There's some people, starting with our vice president, who gets 3 different payments. It's not a question of how much money it is in each payment, but why are you taking so many? And who gets what? The retirement system right now has the burden of payment not only to retired people, but also for children. What we have is what we call a universal payment for children, for poor children. It's not universal. It only gets to some people. And at the same time, we're using the same pool of money for other issues that are, excuse me for saying it, it's entirely political, like giving loans to retired people or paying for tourism. And when I'm saying giving a loan, I just mentioned our inflation is 150%. Well, you know, the loan for a retired person is at 29%. So within 2 months, that money is just disappearing. So the pool is continually shrinking, because whatever you're making out of it as a loan, you're never getting it back in real terms. There's a lot of other things like that that should be taken away. You would say, well, how much money can that be? And it is very significant portion of what the retirement pool needs. In the future, too, we would certainly want to have some sort of retirement accounts, like 401k equivalent or something like that, where people can put their money and it's earmarked. And hopefully they will get some sort of good result. And we're considering putting that together with, for example, real estate solutions, that you can put that money into some sort of funds that will be dedicating to building new homes for either for yourself or take it as a rent in the future, or for poor people who have incredible housing needs in Argentina. It's about 2 million homes that need to be built, and that money could go into that rather than the kind of things that given free tickets for cinema for retired people. And as time goes by, not necessarily day one, but as time goes by, you would have a portfolio that would be really significant. And once it becomes significant, it can have all other uses for other purposes like infrastructure, etc. That's not the use we're giving it right now.
Thank you, Diana. The other big topic, particularly, I think, relevant for listeners dialing in from all over the region, but particularly Washington, D.C., has to be with the relationship with the IMF. As you know, whoever comes in will inherit an indebtedness of close to $50 billion with the IMF. Over the last few months, we've seen a extend and pretend strategy by both sides, in my view, that of course cannot persist forever. This has to be addressed at some point head on. What would your approach be, Diana, with dealing with the IMF, the IMF relationship?
First of all, we would never insult the IMF, and at the same time ask them for more money, which they're doing not necessarily as time goes by or different actors in the political arena. It's the same person that insults them in the morning and takes a flight in the afternoon and says, please make it easier on my life. The other thing is Argentina has a total burden of, give or less, the total debt to GDP is about 100% already. And out of that total, less than 20% of our total debt is to multilaterals, including IMF. So that means we have other 80% to take care of. So putting the blame on IMF is completely childless. Not childless. It's infantile. It's ridiculous. It's very useful from the political side. We're not doing well because of IMF. When we have not paid the IMF a single cent so far. We will have to pay them in the very short term. But so far, we have not paid back the IMF, not 1 cent. Not 1 cent. So we need to start paying them. But even so, our IMF is the cheapest creditor we have right now, at least among international creditors. So, finance teacher, I can tell you, you should always pay your most expensive debt first. And I mean, leaving behind a program for the IMF is a badge of honor, but not financially. It's not the best thing you could do right now with your resources. Let me put it this way. I really said we're not paying to the IMF because they're bad guys and they're asking us to do very awful things, which nobody knows what they are. The Argentine government goes and signs a swap with the Chinese government for $10 billion, which is significantly more than what that should be paid to the IMF. And nobody knows what restrictions, what the conditions, if there are any covenants. Nobody knows the conditions of that swap. Certainly, I really doubt it's any cheaper than the IMF right now. And so putting the blame on IMF is easy. It's easy. You have a bogus man to blame. But let me put it the other way around. Sorry. For whatever reason, Argentina tomorrow has no IMF debt. Sorry, let me put it even harder. For whatever reason, Argentina has no debt tomorrow. Absolutely no debt. We found gold or the Queen of England pays our debt. Next morning, you need to ask for more because Argentina has a fiscal deficit. Argentina has a fiscal deficit, a quasi-fiscal deficit, and a financial deficit. But if you put them all together, depending on what exchange rate you consider, it's 8% of total GDP. So discussing anything about the IMF is just, it's really only on the political side. The problem with IMF is we do not have any money, not for the IMF, not for importers, not for any other use, because the central bank right now has, from the accounting perspective, we have negative reserves. Of course, that cannot happen, okay? But it means that they're using money that was in their custody. And if they're using the money that's in their custody, they don't have it anymore. And that's why technically they don't want to keep on using them, and that's why they cannot make payments. Okay, but it's not, the IMF is certainly not our problem. And I know that if this is going to be recorded, and then I will be all over the place saying, oh, Diana says this IMF is not a problem. At least not the worst problem that we have, definitely not.
Terrific. Thank you, Diana. I'm going to start asking you some questions from the audience. Number one, Milei has proposed installing an infrastructure concession system similar to that of Chile. What would that entail? Do you believe a PPP law could pass in Congress?
Do you believe in what?
Do you believe a private-public partnership law could pass in Congress?
Well, we do have a private-public partnership in Congress that was not very successful because it was a little bit cumbersome. But in principle, what we're considering is not even a public-private, just make it private. Why should the electricity system have some branches that are public? Right now, why is the gas pipeline public? The oil pipeline is private. Why should the gas one be public? Why do I have my sewage to be public? Public means, there's another difference with the US. Public means it is paid by everyone in Argentina, and there's not one single cent recovered from whoever is using the public system. In the US, you may have a public sewage company, but you put the money into it every month to pay for it, to pay back the investment that was made at some point in time, and probably that investment was made through some sort of credit. When we're talking public investment in Argentina, it means that the government, wherever that money comes from, decides to make this infrastructure project rather than that one, and nobody will have to pay for that one. Who assesses priorities? What's the payback? Nothing. What we're considering is just let people pay for their own sewage. Let people pay for their own roads, which was the way when I was a kid, okay? Why not? Why not? And you may have significantly increased number of things, because rather than pay into taxes that go, nobody knows where they go, and nobody knows who controls that infrastructure, it should go that way. Now, if you want to have bigger problems, like a new dam or a highway or something like that, you might have a Chilean system that goes, well, we make it for a bit, somebody pays for it, and it's paid back by the user. But principle, you have to do even smaller things in the beginning. And that's one of the reasons we might be using the export tax, the duty on taxes. It's like, well, rather than pay for it, you can build your own school or whatever it is that you need. It probably would have far less corruption, and people would decide what kind of priorities they want to give to that kind of things. Corruption is rampant in Argentina. We have a lot of cases. We even have something that's potentially coming to court one day with people having acknowledged that they bribe government officers. And the figures are very significant. Well, you take that all away. And most probably with the same amount of money, you would be able to do so much more. And most importantly, priorities would be set right by the people who can use it.
Excellent. My next question would be key areas of opportunity, among them oil and gas, lithium, renewable energy. Concrete question here, Diana, is how do you think we can better attract investment, private investment in these areas? What is putting a lid on the opportunity, and what are you proposing to change that?
Well, actually, there are opportunities everywhere. Those are the most significant ones, of course. Well, we need to forget forget about whatever regulatory system we had in the past and make it a new one. Okay, it's not only a tax structure; it is who can add, never take away, add new taxes and the reasons why they can do it, and that would probably change a lot. With cost of capital we have right now, the weighted average cost of capital in Argentina is what, 30%, probably even higher. What kind of investment can you have? In the past, we've had people coming in, and after a while, they were successful, and they were making over 30%, paying back whatever the investment was. And then the unions or somebody comes and says, oh, you're making too much money. Well, exactly. I came into something that would allow me to make a lot of money. And if you bring down with average cost of capital, most probably a lot of things that are not even on the radar right now would come up. The regulatory system needs to be much lighter, open. You have to open to competition. There was a reason in the past to have just one supplier for certain utilities, not anymore. We need technologies. Why would you have just one telecommunication company in a certain area? I'm using this thing. What do you mean just one telecommunication? And there are many areas where you can open up for competition. If you open up for competition and you bring down logistics costs that are also very important, particularly at the ports, where you have a lot of restrictions. There are over 50 ports in Argentina, and only 3 are being used right now. Well, none of those things will happen day one, but you have to open up through Congress with new laws, or sometimes it's just executive power that needs to take away some regulations that says, well, allow all of us to be working into that system. And what are the areas of opportunity? Definitely everything in mining, everything in renewables, actually energy, not necessarily in renewables, agricultural sector. I mean, we could double our surface, or we could significantly increase productivity on existing surface of agricultural products. Well, people talk about tourism because I have beautiful sites and a lovely population that would be eager to talk to tourists. I mean, you name it. Bring down country risk, bring down weighted average cost of capital, bring down the number of regulations, and whatever investment sprouts, it's welcome. I significantly makes me angry when I say, well, we have to do certain things in lithium. We have $6 billion in lithium already. Come on. It's company A and company B, one from Canada, the other one from Australia, that bought each other or got together each other in somewhere. And they have land in Argentina. That doesn't mean they have invested $6 billion in Argentina. That only means that they have one more opportunity in the total globe, one of them being in Argentina. We're fooling ourselves if we think all that money will be coming to Argentina tomorrow. Worst of all, we're fooling ourselves if we believe that the federal government or the provincial government can keep on adding more taxes, or even worse, becoming a shareholder. You know, for mining, there's a mandate that they have to give, depending on the province, 8 or 12% of the shares of the capital. That means 8 or 12% of future dividends, plus whatever they're paying already in royalties. Come on. We will not have a lot of investment through that. And there's no roads, there's no anything. So just bring down sovereign risk, bring down weighted average cost of capital, bring down, deregulate, allow people to move. You know, there are Argentinian companies that have oil operations in Comodoro Rivadavia and Vaca Muerta, which are very far away. They cannot move people from one side to the other, even if they have the same level of expertise. Let those things happen. And eventually, a lot of people will be happier.
Got it. There are a lot of questions coming in on foreign policy, Diana. If we can start with the overall approach that Argentina would take vis-a-vis its relationship with the United States.
open your arms, and we are more than welcome to that. And rather than talking about what we could or could not do with one particular country, is the things that we should not be doing. We should not be doing any more shady deals with autocrats. We should not be doing any kind of, again, of deals that are unknown to the public. All foreign debt should go through Congress according to our constitution. Treaties, we have to do a lot of things with treaties. We have to start a treaty. The only one we have is Mercosur, which dates back to the year 1980 something. We should do far more. We should participate in as many international arena as we can, and not only on gender issues, but on economic issues, on the really relevant issues for public development. And that should be the approach. We will be friends of the United States and any other country that's a democratic country. And if a particular company wants to do a deal with an autocratic company, or a deal that is based in a company, can do it, but not the government. Not the government.
Excellent. Question on governability, or ability to effect change without full control of Congress. Concretely, which parts of your economic program, Arturo asks, do not need congressional approval?
Quite a lot. Everything that's related to deregulation most probably should not go through Congress. That's all executive power, and usually it's not even a minister, it's some undersecretary or something that has put some sort of regulation. There's a lack of coordination among different entities. There's 4, 5, 6 different entities that have to give their opinion or permission or something on one issue. All those should be coordinated. There's one permission for everything. Let the government itself see what else needs to be done, and not ask the company or the family to go through all different steps on their own. And there's a lot of things that can be taken away. And there do not need to be Congress oriented. Now, Congress should be particularly important on the budgetary issues. That's something we take for granted. And the appearance of La Libertad Avanza, which is the party I'm participating with, is significantly relevant, because for the first time, the Congress will not be something that, or the executive power decided this, and Congress votes for it. Let me give you an example. The budget in Argentina is presented in September, was 1,700 pages plus annexes and tables, etc., presented on a Thursday evening. It was voted unanimously, almost unanimously, by the existing big parties on Monday. That's it. So you had barely 48 hours to discuss 1,700 pages. On Armenia, almost unanimously, it's very few people said, hey, I looked into the bottom line, and the bottom line comes in with a huge deficit. I have not had time to look into the details, but I'm not voting for a huge deficit. That was the most that could be done. So if we started having a Congress that is really looking into those issues, I think it would be a significant improvement. Debt should be approved by Congress. Do you know how much debt has been approved by Congress in the last 50 years? It's assumed that it has been approved, because once you approve the budget and you have a deficit, well, what other way did I have to finance it, says the mark? Of course they pretended to be debt. What are the details? What's the tenor? What's the duration? Who is issuing it? What kind of guarantees are you giving to it? Where's the cash flow coming from? Zip. Now, Congress should be doing a lot of that.
I see.
Sorry, I'm not talking economics. There's a lot of other issues that are very relevant to people, no? Like rent controls and all that kind of things, but I'm talking only on the macroeconomic side.
Absolutely. That was the spirit of the question. There is a related question on governability. Richard asks, many of the changes that are proposed might entail quite a bit of short-term pain in terms of increased inflation, maybe decreased economic activity, thinking about long-term gains, right? So how do you think you can contain and avoid some sort of social explosion that might come hand in hand potentially with the short-term pain? How are you thinking about managing that risk?
First of all, we go to church every single Sunday and pray for it. No, just kidding. What we do is consider what is present situation. You already have 150% inflation. You already have riots. You already have some provinces where children don't go to school. Santa Cruz has not had classes ever. You already have Jujuy, where people cannot go from one place to the other in the last 3 or 4 weeks. So we already have a lot of social strife. Real salaries are peanuts. You have under 10 million people that are registered at the labor level institution or whatever it is. So 6 or 7 million people in the private sector, 3.5, almost 4 million people in the public sector. All other 37 million people are either children or retired or people that are unemployed, informal sector, underemployed, whatever you consider. So how much worse can that be? If we take away the deficit, why would you think that would be worse? It would take away inflation. If we put the utility rates at the right level, why would you think that's worse? Because that it depends on what kind of structure you have in your utility bill. Right now, half of it, 40% of it is taxes. If you take away those taxes, well, you can significantly increase what is that the total value chain for energy is getting for that service that they're providing. Why do you think it would be so much worse than 150% inflation? If we manage to bring down the central bank interest rate, if we manage to have a little bit of credit, why do you think it would be any worse? Mind you, there's a lot of economists that are saying, well, you know, central bank liabilities are not such a problem because, well, you know, inflation is even higher. Real inflation is even higher because we have such a lot of suppressed inflation. And that makes me nervous because what you have to consider is assets and liabilities. Yes, liabilities are growing at a lower rate than inflation, but assets are not growing. Actually, assets are shrinking. And if you don't want to have an asset liability management idea, okay, what's the cash flow the central bank has? Where does it come from? Zero. No central bank sells anything. Okay? So why do you think, well, if we keep on inflating over and above what the central bank liabilities are, we would take away that problem? How? So if we are planning to take away that problem because that's the thing that's generating inflation together with public expenditure, why would we have a problem? It's not going to be instantaneous. And if anybody believes, whoever wins, that on December 10th, we will be having a happy spring and nightingales will sing, come on. We already have unemployment, we already have social strife, we already have 150% inflation. The other proposals are not considering how they're going to fix utilities. They are not considering how you're going to fix the financial system. They're already saying, because I'm good and I'm not going to be such a huge thief. A little bit of stealing there's always going to be. But there will not be the sizable corruption that Kirchneristas have. Oh, then people will believe me. Okay, but it will take 100 years. You need to take the bulls by the horse and say, listen, this cannot go on. And yes, there will be problems. But if you don't do it, you still have the same problems or even higher.
I think that's the perfect segue, Diana. Kesia asks about other economists, right? How much overlap, how much agreement is there between your economic plan and the economic plan of Juntos por el Cambio?
I would say some of those people are my friends or my students. And on a personal level, we would agree on 95%. The thing is, maybe because they have already been in power, they say, oh, no, that's what you're going to say. It's not going to work. You're not going to be able to do it. I would like to, but I don't think we will be able to go politically through that system. Well, maybe we're being naive, or maybe we're saying, well, if you keep on being so nice and meeting everybody's on their own terms, you will never get anything done. I'm not going to claim that we're more creative and we have our freedom is much better than yours. Come on, that's not the case. The thing is, how much do we think we can actually do and how fast? And there's one very, very important caveat. Milei has made all his campaign, and all of us who are talking publicly, we're not saying this is going to be fun. We're not saying this is going to be, we're the only ones who are saying this is going to be hard, but we're going to change it, and this is the way we're going to change it. If people were to vote for these ideas, well, they know what it will take. Unfortunately, all politicians need to say that they're wonderful, and all politicians need to say that, follow me, I'm going to be the best one. That's not the case of this party. And it's a small party. And who knows whether there will be a significant portion of the electorate that will follow these ideas. But at least we've been able to put into the public arena a lot of issues that were not being discussed before. Size of expenditure, co-participation, that's something we have not mentioned, but what do we do with the fiscal deficit? Inflation is a monetary issue. All those things, people have been listening to that, and other politicians are talking about that too. So about the economic themes for Juntos por el Cambio, I would say I respect those guys a lot, and I would say I would really be able to work with them very, very, very easily. And I believe they would say the same about us. Now, how much forward, how much fast can you go would be the difference. On the other hand, I believe they have a different, not a different diagnosis, but they look at the problem from a different perspective. For example, they believe, well, if you increase the dollar, well, that goes into prices, and then you will never end inflation. And, well, true, absolutely true. That's how you propagate inflation, not how it was created. If you take away the source of creation, you will have an important issue with relative prices. You cannot spend more money than what you get. If you get more money, well, you can allocate it differently, but there's no way. And they're not looking into production areas. You won't ask me about macroeconomic issues, but I come from the private sector at the company level. I can tell you, like, I make working capital for the companies. To me, it's far more important than the dollar issue. Companies have no working capital in Argentina, and there's no credit. So no working capital and no credit. Hey, what can I do? I know imports because I have no. There's no way I can buy certain things I need from abroad, and I can only sell to certain people because otherwise, other ones will say, no, it's either the black market or I'm not talking to you. Something very relevant. I know you didn't ask about it, but it's what's the size of the black economy in Argentina? 30, 40, 50%? I don't know. When people say, well, you know, our tax structure is not that bad because, listen, you're considering total revenue. What you have to look is total individual rates. There was this very important article published recently by some government officers. So, well, you know, in France, in Sweden, etc., total collection is way higher. Yes, but look at the marginal rate, and look who pays the marginal rate, and look at what level the marginal rate starts. Do they have a tax on dividends? Do they have 50% of their total revenue based on labor? Yes, of course. A total revenue in Argentina is 38% of GDP. That doesn't mean that everybody's paying 38%. There's a lot of poor people, a lot of retired people, a lot of young people, those are not paying. So if in principle, 7 million people are paying their taxes, well, the tax burden is significantly higher than 38%. We need to change to shift it. And Laffer curve that everybody loves, including me, yeah, that's if everybody will pay. If you bring down taxes, people would rather keep paying zero than a lower rate. So what you need to change the system, the way it works. Otherwise, the only thing you will get by lowering taxes is lower revenue, because the people who pay will be the same people that are already paying. You will not have an additional base.
Thank you, Diana, for sharing. I want to wrap up with a question around artificial intelligence. As you know, it's been a hot topic in 2023.
I'm not a robot. I'm Diana. Don't worry about me. I'm not. Oh, sorry.
It may feel a little bit detached from Argentina in particular, given how challenging the macroeconomic situation is. But I think no economic debate can exclude this reality, because artificial intelligence is set to alter the economic structure of just about any country in the world. And there's many open questions regarding its impact on labor, productivity, etc. I notice you do highlight it in a number of items within the electoral platform, but give me a rundown of how do you plan to approach this, and how can Argentina be better prepared to turbocharge development via AI and protect itself from the risks?
Yeah, let me rephrase your question. Argentina,
Please.
For many things, we're working under medieval conditions and centralized conditions. The salary for any union is decided in Buenos Aires for everyone, north to south. The cleaning lady has to have the same salary north to south. So if you approach it from a decentralization perspective and leapfrogging from the kind of technology that we have into the most advanced one that we can pay for, then you would have a significant increase in productivity. Some people say, oh, you would have a lot of public employees that would be useless. Come on, they're useless right now. Don't fool yourself. Doctors will still be needed, nurses will still be needed, teachers will still be needed, policemen will still be needed. Maybe you can enhance the tools that they can use, but they would still be needed. The kind of resources we have, you mentioned them, natural resources, mainly mining, energy, agriculture, they still need a lot of people. So I'm mentioning this because unemployment is a huge issue in Argentina. It may not be in other countries. In other countries, you already have a nice level of employment, and you need to switch people from one activity to another. And the old saying, you kind of have a truck driver become a yoga teacher. Okay. But right now, people are unemployed in Argentina. So you can put them into something that you may need to train them before. That puts a lot of burden on our proposals for education. The children who are being undernourished right now, malnourished, who don't understand what they're reading by the end of their high school. Those children need to have, the children that are very young right now, there's a lot of investment that needs to go into that arena. Right now, forget about economics, just do it for moral issues. You cannot have 10 million children that don't know how to read and write proficiently, okay? So AI might help in a lot of issues. And since we will have to leapfrog in technologies, we might as well go into that one. But we need to decentralize decisions. Most probably, it will be a very useful tool. And if it's not a useful tool, at least we would be advancing on what we have right now. What do I mean by not being a useful tool? Because, well, maybe it creates other problems that we're not even envisioning right now. But decentralization has to be done in Argentina. There's no way we can keep on having this kind of level of concentration in the decisions. And I'm not talking decentralization Bitcoin-wise, okay? I'm talking
Understood.
decentralization, that not one guy decides. We had it, today is Wednesday, we had it on Monday, that our government decided what the price for corn, soybean, no, not soybean, well, for 4 or 5 different products, what the price will be from now until December 31st. I say, excuse me, have you ever heard of CBOT? Have you ever heard of commodity prices volatility? Do you know that we set the price for half a dozen, or 2.5 dozens of eggs, whether they're colored or white? So that needs to be taken away. Is that AI? No, definitely not. But once you take those things away, you can put a lot of other instruments in place. Will it be done next morning? No way. We still need to get away all that burden that we have. But at least we're talking about it, we're considering it.
Very good, Diana. Thank you so much for your time. We've talked for a full hour. We've covered, I think, a lot of ground. Really appreciate your explanations. Very clear. Exciting times ahead in terms of the race. Wishing you best of luck. Do you have any closing remarks you want to share with us?
Well, it would be a political statement, but mind you, the two big political parties have no ideology right now. Ours may not be what people like, may not be voted for, but at least we say what we want to do and we say why we want to do it. Hopefully, the other guys will be able to convey to people what is it that they want to do, because otherwise people are just voting for one person, not the ideas, not the program, not the platform. We're the only ones who have registered the platform. The other ones we're still waiting for.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Diana. Benjamin, over to you to send that off and maybe walk us through what's coming up in terms of the Argentina Elige series.
Excellent. Many thanks. That was fantastic. Alejo, I appreciate it. Diana, that was spectacular. Indeed, we plan to have representatives from all the major campaigns. So we have our next one coming up on August 1st. We will have another one on August 8th. We will follow the PASO. We have invitations to all of the candidates as well. Clearly, we are committed here at the Wilson Center's Latin America program to taking advantage of all the attention being paid to Argentina right now in advance of the election to talk through potential solutions to the very serious problems that Alejo has laid out. We were glad to hear the perspective, Diana, that you shared and the vision of Javier Milei. We will offer the same opportunity to the other campaigns as, again, we try to generate policy solutions and take advantage of the opportunities that Argentina has in the coming years. So again, thank you very much, Diana. Thank you, Alejo. Please stay tuned, all of you who are watching today, for our future events on this election. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.